All right, so for tonight's reading, you're reading about different models used in geography. And a lot of these we'll be learning about as we move through those topics throughout the rest of the year. This is just an introduction to how geographers use models. So you need to be a little bit familiar with them, so make sure you review them after this video. Make sure you're prepared to answer some easy questions on your reading quiz. But we're really going to be applying these models much later in the year. So one of the first models mentioned in your review book is this concentric zone model, which was created in the 1920s by Ernest Burgess. And they are based on his studies of Chicago, and these are models for how cities are developed. So Ernest said that you'd have the center business district in the center of the city. And the center business district is where you would see lots of banks and businesses and maybe like the downtown area. So you'd have like City Hall and the court. And so really it's a central area. And if you go to some cities, like if you go to West Palm or look at a map of West Palm or Miami, you'll often see the CBD label. And then outside you'll have the zone of transition, which is an area where there's light industry. So light factories, we're not talking about like steel mills, but maybe like food, butcher shops, meat processing plants, paper factories. So light industry, nothing like super crazy like a steel plant. And an area of residential deterioration, which is, homes that are kind of falling into disrepair. So this is going to be an area where maybe more lower income people live. And then in the third area, blue collar workers. And the fourth and the fifth area, middle class and the people with more wealth. In the 1920s, people were moving out of cities and beginning to commute in to work. And so you're starting to get the development of the suburbs a little bit. The other urban models, like the sector model, was also based on Chicago, but it was based on Chicago almost 20 years later. And what you can see is just that it's shaped a little different. That you've got this high income area here, which if you've ever been to Chicago, you would know that there's some really, right coming up from like the downtown area, you do have some very expensive homes and some very expensive condos and like high-rise buildings. And then you've got your, same thing, you've got your low-class residential, but it's kind of spread out a bit more. You've got your wholesale and light manufacturing. And now it's moved into wholesale places. So factories and warehouses where you pick things up, but maybe less stuff is being built. The 1939 was still like a highlight of American industry. So we still had lots of manufacturing, but this is all going to be replaced with warehouses later. And then you have your medium class residential. And then after 1939, after the 1940s, as cars became more common, as we built the freeways, after the 1950s, we really pumped up this idea of the suburbs. So people lived out in the suburbs and they drove or took a train in to cities. And so the structure of the city changed. Cities that kind of got bigger in the late 1940s, early 50s fit a little bit better in this multiple nuclei model. So the multiple nuclei model means that the center business district is no longer just the center area of the city. So usually you have an outlying business district as well. So like Miami fits this model really well. So there's not one area that is like the main area to go to in Miami. You've got the Bayview area, you've got the downtown area by the museums, and so you've got multiple nuclei. You might have like a center over here where you have like universities and museums, and so there's multiple nuclei. The demographic transition model, and as far as worrying about what's going on in each stage, you won't need to know that for your quiz, but you do need to know that the demographic transition model shows how population changes over time, and that you can apply this model to basically all countries. So today there's no countries here in stage one, but throughout the rest of the model you can track it. So the U.S. is here. During the American Revolution, we would have been like right around here. We would have been here in the early part of the 1900s. So the demographic transition model is just a model for population growth. Another model that we might talk about is the bid rent curve. The bid rent curve will be later applied to agriculture and to urban areas, but it really just says that the further you are away from the center business district right here, the less your rent will be. So less the land will cost. And so in the center business district, you'll have a lot more retail because they can afford to pay that higher premium for land. And if you're looking in the center business district of many cities, you're going to see that you have things like Bloomingdale's and Macy's and Lord and Taylor and nicer stores. You're not going to get as many small stores that sell things, for, cheap things that like I could afford. So you're going to have stores where they can make enough money to make that expensive land worthwhile. And then you'll have manufacturing out further away because then the land is worth it. You don't have manufacturing here because you wouldn't make any money. And then residential homes are usually the furthest out because the land becomes too expensive for many people to afford, unless you're in like a high rise in a city and you're buying like luxury condos. Then there'll be an exception. So there are some very expensive homes, of course, in this area. The gravity model is another model you'll talk about this year. And the gravity model really just says that it predicts how much, it predicts the flow of migration between two places. And you have to use two factors, not just how far away it is. You can also use it for how much different commodities or materials flow back and forth, how far people will move to commute for work, shopping patterns. You can use it to apply to really any pattern of movement. And so if you're looking at a short distance, more things are going to move. But in the gravity model, things are going to move further if you're being attracted to a bigger source. So people will commute from further away to work in a larger city. People will move from across the world to either a larger city or to a country with a large number of job opportunities. People will not move as far to commute to a smaller area. And that's it for your models.